You're listening to Season 4, Episode 7 of the Indie Artist Tribe podcast with me, your host, Angela Matamocha. Welcome! Hi there, good people. Hi. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today's guest has been a literary manager at Cartel Entertainment since 2018. She has staffed writers on shows like Hacks, Ginny and Georgia, P-Valley, Grownish, Single Drunk Female, and Reasonable Doubt. Her clients have also written feature films like Alice Darling through Lionsgate with Anna Kendrick, Crushed, which is on Tubi, The Santa Summit on Hallmark, and the Single Black Female franchise on Lifetime. I met her last year at Stowe Story Lab's writing retreat and just found her to be incredibly charming, honest, personable, smart, and so passionate. She's just lovely. Good people, I bring to you Audrey Knox. Audrey, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. I send that bio out to people all the time, but it just hits different when someone else is reading it. And I'm so impressed by everything my clients have done. I'm like, wow, listen to that list.
That is very impressive. Like, oh my gosh. And I love that you have clients that you are staffing on shows and you also have feature film writers. Before we dive in, and obviously we will, I do want to thank you, first of all, for sharing your Substack with me, and we'll get into that later. There's just so much valuable information for writers in particular on there. But before we dive into anything, I just want to know, what is it that you, Audrey Knox, what do you love about being a literary manager?
My background is in screenwriting. I studied screenwriting at Dodge College at Chapman University. So I came into this industry through the pursuit of writing, took a little bit of a detour. While I was at Chapman, I had a couple internships. One was working in the writer's room at CSI. One was working on set of The Millionaire Matchmaker for season 7. And when I graduated, I was so taken by just how much more exciting reality TV was than a procedural that was on season 14, that I did go that route a little bit. I got distracted. I was very into development, casting. I worked for a production company that did all kinds of formatted reality dating shows like Dating Naked and Are You the One? And when I finally moved from that to working at Cartel, so I started before 2018 as an assistant and worked my way up to coordinator and then junior manager and now manager where I am today. I really was so grateful to be back working with writers, working in scripted television. And then the more we built out our department with feature writers as well, I love working on the creative with my clients. I do a lot of deal making and negotiating and trying to find jobs and putting my writers up for those jobs, but I don't get out of bed in the morning because of the deal. That feels like more of an agent personality trait that is not mine. So I do it, but what I really love is the creative. So it almost feels to me like I get to have all these different writing careers under my belt without having to do any of the writing or do any of the jobs. I represent all of the writers and guide them and get invested in all of their projects and help bring them out into the marketplace. But I don't have to choose one specific path. I can be the manager of all the paths. That's what has really been the most fun part about representation for me.
And I can only imagine that all the paths are so different.
Yes, exactly. The different ways into the industry, the different types of jobs there are here, the different types of writers. There's as many different kinds of careers here being a professional writer as there are people.
And do you also work with writer directors, or is it specifically writers?
I have a couple writer director clients. It's not a huge area of focus for me. I would love for it to be a bigger focus.
Oh,
It
interesting.
just is a bit more of an uphill battle. It's more of the indie space, the getting that first feature, the getting the second feature. And so I have built more of a business around TV writing, TV staffing, feature, open writing assignments, and taking out my clients' original projects for development. Cartel does rep directors, writers, and writer-directors. It's not a big piece of my personal roster, but it is an area I'm interested in exploring more.
For a writer director, just because, getting their projects off the ground are so like producer dependent a lot of times, can a writer director, or have you seen writer directors move forward without management? Like, when is a good time for a writer director to look for management, or should they really be focused on building relationships with producers?
I'm a big fan of recommending pursuing management at the same time as pursuing everything else. I don't view management as the answer to all of your career goals, hopes, and dreams. We're
Right.
more of I wish it was. I think a lot of people assume that I am the gatekeeper holding the keys to the kingdom, and I'm just not letting them in, and therefore am denying them the opportunity to do what they want to be doing. When in reality, when I sign a client, that's actually the beginning of the journey. And now together, we have to roll up our sleeves, work really hard, generate these opportunities, put these packages together, make it happen. And it can take a couple of years, especially if that writer doesn't have previous credits, doesn't have a lot of connections. If we're starting from zero, it's going to be a while. It's going to be a career investment and a time investment, both for the writer and for me. So whether it's a writer or a writer director, I think that trying to do whatever you can on your own is really smart. I wouldn't necessarily wait. I think writers and writer directors and creatives of all kinds really can get into this trap of, oh, I need to XYZ before I can dot, dot, dot. And a lot of times that XYZ is, oh, I need to find a manager before I can start marketing myself seriously. But maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's, I need to produce a script before I approach agents or managers, because then they won't take me seriously. And you can box yourself in because you don't know what's going to hit or what people are going to respond to or where a manager could find you. Perhaps if you manage to get resourceful, find producers, find financing, shoot your indie feature, it's in a film festival, maybe you get managers out of that. I know Cartel doesn't make a big business of going to festivals and looking for talent there. We more operate on personal recommendations, but I have tons of friends at the various bigger agencies who, yeah, they'll send people to TIFF, they'll send people to Sundance, and they're looking for directors, writers, talent that needs representation. So maybe a manager can help you get there and help you get your movie made, or maybe your movie can help you get a manager. It's a lot of frustrated creatives refer to it as this chicken and egg problem, when in reality, it's you just got to put as many different irons in the fire as you can reasonably manage. And when one takes off, it will help you get the others.
It's almost like, being an actor and like not acting until you get an agent. Um,
Yeah, you wouldn't
but
do that.
you don't. You act wherever you can. You create your own stuff. You do plays. You have to keep doing your craft and meeting people at the same time. One of the things that you just said is that you or the cartel does not really go to festivals looking for talent. It's more referrals. I also, and tell me if I'm wrong, understand that you do read a lot or all queries.
I read all queries. And what I mean by that is if
Yes.
people email me their logline bio request for my attention, I do read all of those emails. I am skimming them quickly. I've been trying to respond to them more this year, but that has gotten a bit untenable. So I might actually stop responding if it's a no. I just don't have time. I'm giving feedback on why it's a no. Sometimes then they respond and they want to know more. And I have to get through, I'm scheduling meetings for my clients. I'm doing submissions to network studios and producers. I have my client material to read. It actually does add up. So I probably won't be responding to very many queries from now on, but I do read every single email. I will request, not often, but I will request scripts that sound interesting. Usually, I put that script through our intern department, so I'm getting coverage on it first. Depending on how professional the query email looks, if it looks a little dicey, I might ask the intern, read the first 10 pages. If they're good, then read the whole thing and do full coverage. Or if they seem professional, they have good references, I'll just tell the intern to read the whole thing. They'll give me a summary and an evaluation, and they'll rank it on a scale of recommend to pass. If it's on the consider, strongly consider, recommend side of things, I will, depending on my workload, read it myself and then decide if I want to meet with the writer and continue the conversation. So there are multiple filters in this process. So I can't read every script that's coming in, but I do read every query email that comes in, unless it's caught by my spam folder, but those that
That's
aren't.
That's really great for writers to know, and it also makes me understand the importance of that query email. That is your first touch, that is your intro, that is kind of everything before moving on to the next level. So when you say, dicey email, what does a dicey email look like?
There are so many potential red flags in a query email. It could be aesthetic if they're using 20-point Comic Sans font, it's happened, or yellow font, I don't know. Or it could be maybe I've been posting a lot on my email newsletter, on LinkedIn, advice to writers, and because of that, I've gotten a lot more query emails than I have in the past. It
I
used to be very
bet.
regular, now it's even more often. And I have gotten some query emails where it's just the subject line is, will you be my agent? I'm also not an agent, so we're already off to a bad start.
Yeah.
And then the body of the email is 1 or 2 sentences. I'm looking for a representation for my screenplay. Can you help me? That's not a good query letter. So they can actually be very dicey, but maybe something more in the middle where
Yeah.
I might request the script, but be a little dubious would be perhaps their summary is really long and rambling
Mm,
when I'm looking for a more concise, marketable log line. Maybe their bio is very heartfelt and about their life experiences, and it sounds like they have an interesting life, but they don't have any entertainment industry experience. So I don't know
mm,
if they've been around scripts, if they've read a lot of scripts. They seem very like they might have a compelling voice, but they're inexperienced. That's what I would potentially request, but have a bit of a hesitation on. I'm not sure about this person. They could surprise me. So
right.
I'm open to it, but I'm also not, my expectations aren't very high.
Right, right. And it's interesting. So, with that, a dicey email, you might have your reader read the first 10 pages only.
Exactly.
So then again, that's another thing for writers to think about, those first 10 pages, right? Is that common, the first 10, the first 5? Like, I'm sure it's different for everyone, but that's interesting. 10
It
pages.
depends on the role. I've heard showrunners say for staffing samples, it's the first 5. I think 10 is a good rule of thumb because you should at least, you're not going to get into the whole story by page 10, but you should at least have a compelling character, a compelling scene. You're setting up a question. Maybe it's not the question of the movie, but it's the question of the act.
Yes.
And the way I instruct my interns is read the first 10 pages. When you get to page 10, if you legitimately want to keep reading, that's when you should continue. And that's a pretty high bar too, because I know a lot of times I'll read scripts, or when I was an intern, I read scripts where I'm reading it, evaluating, saying, okay, well, I can kind of see where it's going. Sure, it's not totally painful. Let's give it a try. But that isn't legitimately wanting to continue reading because you care about what's happening next. You're open to reading, which is when it's coming in through an unsolicited submission. I think the bar does need to be really high because there are so many of them. So you want to be actually entertaining your reader, just like you'll be actually entertaining your audience.
Typos, misspelling. If,
All of that matters to me, especially on the first 5 pages. If I'm reading a 90-page feature and there's a typo on page 65, I don't care. I usually don't even write it down. Maybe I'll write it down so that when I talk to the writer, they know I was really paying attention and I really did read it. But generally, I don't care. But if there's a typo or a misspelling on page 4, then I start thinking, did you even reread this? And then I get mad and I feel disrespected because if you won't even read your script, why should I read your script?
How many queries, I'm just curious, on average do you get a week, a day?
Say 5 to 10 a day. So they can add up over the course of a week. I don't recommend querying on weekends. Those do tend to get buried, but I do get queries on weekends as well, which I understand because that's when writers often, if they have day jobs, have time off and can be doing these things. But compose your email, save it as a draft, and either schedule it to send on when Wednesday is actually the day that I think is the smartest to send your query email. Either schedule it to send or save it in the drafts folder and hit send on a Wednesday morning or afternoon. Don't send it on the weekend if possible.
That's interesting you said Wednesday. In my mind, I always thought Tuesday was a good day. Is it because Monday everyone's just kind of scrambling and getting caught up over the weekend, and then Tuesday a lot is going on still, and then Wednesday
Tuesday's
kind
not a
of
bad day. Monday, you're exactly right.
not Monday. Yeah,
Things got came in over the weekend, important things. No offense to querying writers, but priority wise, they
of
are
course.
at the bottom of the list in terms of it has to be client deals I'm
Yeah.
negotiating, client jobs that I'm trying to get, client scripts I need to read, industry contacts I'm following up with and setting meetings with, and internal emails in which I'm sharing information with other managers and colleagues, and then queries. So there's a lot of stuff that comes in over the weekend, and or everyone's following up on Monday. I do my follow-ups a lot of times on Monday. So we're all trying to get the important, urgent stuff done Monday, Tuesday. Thursday, Friday, we're looking to the weekend. What am I reading this weekend? Putting my to-do list together, making my weekend plans, trying to reconcile these two things, realizing I've agreed to read too many things, and when am I going to fit this all into my weekend schedule? If a query comes in, I'm probably going to be thinking, oh, I'll deal with that next week, and then it will get buried because I've already picked out what's going to be my priority for the weekend, and I'm moving on from newly submitted items. But generally about Wednesday afternoon, I can get to the end of my inbox. I've done my to-do list and I have a couple hours, or I'm starting to think proactively. And if a query comes in at that time, it'll usually catch me not as busy.
That's really great for writers to know. Then also to know that once they do get, yes, I will read your screenplay, I will read your pilot, the appropriate time before one follows up. Is it 2 weeks? Is it 2 months?
It depends on the length of the script. If it's a half-hour pilot, 3 weeks to a month is fine. If it's a 90 to 120 page feature, give it a month or two,
Yeah.
probably a month and a half. It also depends on the time of year. If you are querying between Thanksgiving and Christmas, which I recommend you do not, then you might need to give it 3 or 4 months because
Yeah.
we have the whole holiday, then the January through February post-holiday catch up. And I'm only really now catching my breath and getting into that backlog this week. If it's the summer, we all have a lot more time, so you can keep that timeline a little bit shorter. You just need to take into consideration the fact that the person you've asked to read your script is a human being with a life and a career and their own priorities. I think a lot of people forget this.
What is the most challenging thing about your job, about managing these clients that you adore, you love, wanting to get them jobs?
It's juggling everything. I know that my clients know that I have multiple clients. Obviously, they understand how this industry works. I'm not lying to them. I'm not cheating on them by having multiple clients. It's an expectation. However, I always want them to feel like they are my only client or my favorite client. I don't want to be in a meeting sitting down and saying, well, I have these other clients that I have to take care of first, so I'll get to you after I handle XYZ. I don't want them to know or even feel that I'm prioritizing them behind anyone.
Right.
You can't have 24 writers who are all number one priorities. So the trick is for me to strategize and manage my time so that I'm getting done what needs to be done for each person. Now, I say I have 24, 25 clients right now. Some of them are working. They don't all need things from me at one time.
Right.
That would be unsustainable. But some of them are cycling off shows, some of them need jobs, some of them have jobs. And so there are times in which I have less on my plate and times in which I have more on my plate. And I need to be strategic about making sure that I'm taking care of everyone's needs in such a way that they don't feel neglected. That is the hard balance.
Yeah, I could imagine. And I guess, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but you work closely with your clients' projects. You read their scripts before you go out to showrunners and you give them notes and you have feedback and they write. I mean, it's a lot of reading, right?
It is a lot of reading. I do like to get creatively involved in drafts. I love giving notes and feedback. I do tell my clients that just because of the laws of physics, I can only read a script for the first time once. So I do recommend, if you know I'm going to have notes, make sure that your draft is as good as possible. Because if I give a client a note and they say, "Oh, I already am working on fixing that," great, they're one step ahead. But now they don't get my fresh set of eyes on the fix. They get my second set of eyes on the fix. So I can and will and do read multiple drafts of a client script. I love doing that. But I'm going to start getting as close to the script as the writer is. And after a certain amount of time, I'm going to need to pull in a colleague or an intern I trust or an assistant I trust or a friend that I trust and ask them for their opinion because I've just become too close to it and everything makes sense to me now.
What are you most excited about right now?
I have a couple of clients who have broadcast half-hour comedy pitches. One is set up, the pilot is set up at a network. One, the pilot is set up at a production company with an overall deal at a network. So I've got my fingers crossed for those. Would love to sell to broadcast TV shows in 2024.
And these are comedies, broad comedies, you say?
Yes, I love comedy. So
Okay,
that's
good to
a
know.
space I want to be in. And I have 4 or 5 spec feature scripts from clients all across the board. High concept rom-com, action comedy,
Wow.
horror with comedic elements, different genres. So the nice thing about that is I can take them out all at once, so I'm not sending them all to the same producers. But I do get excited about having new material. These scripts are scripts these writers have been working on since before the strike last year. Scripts that we were feeling like we were getting close to taking out when the strike happened, and now we've had to sit on. We've refined even more, so that's exciting. But now I'm ready. I feel very chomping at the bit to be setting more meetings, set some more projects up at production companies and studios.
Do you often work with the same production companies and
I
studios?
don't think so.
Yeah.
I like a variety. Plus, a project can be with a producer for months to a few years. If I have a producer working on a client's script or attached to a client script, I don't want to bring them a different client script because now I'm pulling their attention away from the thing that
Right.
I've already brought them. So I try to spread the wealth a little bit.
And with the producers that you work with, when they, agree to a script, you've gone through the script with the client, does that producer, and I'm sure some of them do, come back with their own notes, right? And
Absolutely. Yes.
yes, right? And then do you ever get in a situation where the producer's notes are very, maybe different than what you and the client decided to do with the script? Is there ever a sort of a butting heads of like, huh, that's not what we were thinking? That's interesting.
That has happened, but in the instances I can think of, it happens in the conversation stage. So I'll take
Right.
a project out to various producers. The client will sit down with those executives and hear what they have to say, hear what their notes are. Often, before attaching to the project, the executive will say, these are the notes we have, go fix them, then come back and we'll talk. And if the client is excited about those notes, they're more than happy to do that work, because then if the producer takes on that project, awesome. And if the producer doesn't take on that project, hey, at least their advice made the script better. But I've had clients in situations in which maybe they're talking to a couple different producers, or we've brought the script to an executive who's excited about it, and they have notes or ideas or suggestions that would take it in a completely different direction.
Yes.
Then the client has two options: go with them because it has a better chance of getting made, or stick to your guns and don't package up the project with that producer. Don't bring that project to them. I think that in those conversation stages, it's important to learn from executives what they see in your script and what they would want to contribute to it, how they would want to change it. Some scripts, writers don't care what happens to it. They like the idea, but if you want to make it something totally different, fine. I just want to get a movie made. Other projects, maybe even the same writer will feel differently about a different script. This one's really close to me. This is my passion project. I have a very specific vision because this theme is really important to me. And then they won't want to compromise for any reason. Either approach is valid. You just want to know what your opinion is and what you're going to be asked to do before you get into that partnership.
I can also imagine, like, for the writer that is just wants to stick to their guns and is not willing to, alter anything because it is so close to their heart. The amount of faith one must have, right, to realize, like, okay, I trust another producer will get it and will come on, right?
Exactly. And I think fate, yes. And also, I would rather see this story not told than told poorly,
Yes.
which is another valid perspective to have. Though I didn't mention, there is a third way with all of this, that I have some clients who are really good at this, which is being open to almost all notes and changes and picking one or two hills to die on, where I will change anything about this script, but not this one thing. And if your producer is collaborative, they're usually amenable to some levels of pushback, as long as you're selective about that pushback and you have a reason justifying why you don't want to make that change. A lot of times they'll really respect that, rather than someone just blindly following all of their orders.
This Substack, I want to switch gears real quick. What made you start it? You mentioned that you would post a lot of things on LinkedIn. People would ask questions, and did you just feel like, okay, I need to do something with this?
It was always my intention to start an email newsletter. Ultimately, I wanted an opportunity to, in long form, answer a lot of these questions, the kinds of questions that you're bringing me right now. I've been on a lot of panels. I've mentored at places like the Stowe Story Labs. I've been a guest speaker in writing classes. I'm going to be a guest speaker in Jen Grisanti's class coming up on March 19th.
Oh, she's so lovely.
I love her so much. I have general meetings with writers all the time. I've taught classes. I have friends who will ask me questions. And a lot of the questions are the same. I just keep getting the same questions over and over. And I don't mind answering them over and over. But if I had a place on the internet where the answer was thoroughly explored, that I could scale, because I could only talk to so many people throughout my day with my time, I could either direct people that I don't have time to talk to over to a library of information, and I could get fewer dicey query emails if I have publicly posted all of the rules writers should follow when sending query emails. So maybe they will send me better emails. Going off of that, now if I get really unprofessional query emails that don't know anything or exhibit any knowledge, I can easily delete them, knowing that I have put a resource out onto the internet that I do try to promote as much as possible to writers who seem interested in breaking in yet inexperienced. I know a lot of these this industry has been very opaque and not willing to talk to newbies about how things work. And I don't think, I mean, for some people it might be malicious, but I think for a lot of us, we just don't have time. I
Yeah.
just don't have time to sit down and explain to someone who has never even been to Los Angeles how the whole process works. So my hope is, as I continue to post a new article every Friday, eventually I'll have a library of information that any writer can access, even if I don't have time to talk to them. But I can't just be posting into the void, otherwise, how would they find me? I used to post on Twitter back in the day. I would do a thread every once in a while, usually while I was home for the holidays, hanging out with my family, because it was something that I had time to do, but didn't take a lot of mental effort because it's just me talking about my job. It's second nature to me. But all of the writers on Screenwriter Twitter really positively responded to everything that I was putting out there. I hate Elon Musk as a person. So when he bought Twitter, I left. It drastically improved my mental health. I cannot recommend leaving Twitter enough.
Yep.
It really changed a lot of things for the better. But I wanted a place where the algorithm could help me find writers who were interested in what I was talking about. So LinkedIn felt like the obvious place. I just started posting answers to Q&As that had been sent to me. Anytime I was writing an email to someone answering a question that they had, I would just copy and paste it into a LinkedIn status. If someone commented on a LinkedIn status, I would respond to them answering their question, and then realized I could copy and paste that into a status. So really, I just sit down once a month, write a bunch of posts, schedule them to all go out once a day, and add to it when stuff comes up. And through that, I can put more resources out into the wild. So I'll have a place to direct people to if they have more questions than I have time to answer.
For people listening that want to follow you, is it just Substack, Audrey Knox?
So it's audreyknox.substack.com.
Do you see yourself expanding into other things like, producing or teaching? You have such an entrepreneurial vibe about you, and a teacher and a leader. You've got all this kind of going. So I just wonder, is manager it or
I
more?
do like producing. I am working on optioning some IP through Cartel right now in order to package that up with writers that I've identified, bring it to showrunners, maybe the right director. Producing is something that managers can do and something that managers do very often.
Yes.
You'll sometimes see certain management companies that will not be named are producers on all of their clients' projects just because I represent this writer, therefore I'm a producer on all their things. I don't do that, and Cartel doesn't do that, which is one thing I really like about Cartel. But we do have a whole producing side. But what that means is we're finding the books, articles, video games, whatever it is, we're optioning the material. We're putting up development money to develop that material, to find the pitch. We might bring it to writers who are clients at Cartel, but we might not. We might bring it to other writers who are repped by other companies. So we are legitimately acting as producers of the movies and TV shows that come through Cartel Entertainment. I have helped facilitate previous Cartel projects, but I haven't owned any of my own. I was associate producer of one of my clients' movies through like the Cartel Pictures side, but I haven't actually found my IP, packaged it up myself, and brought it out to market yet. But that is one thing I'm working on right now and would love to do more of. I have had people asking me or telling me, you should write a book, look at these blog posts. Absolutely. If I have a library of blog posts, I can just stitch those together into a book.
Yep.
What I love about that entrepreneurial side of things, as you
Yes.
call it, is it's scalable. I can do it. I can have it off to the side. I can put that information out there, and it can be a way of adding more of my contributions to the world, diversifying my business a little bit. Things are very unpredictable these days.
Yes.
The internet is full of negative aspects to our health and time, but it's also a great opportunity to build a brand for myself, put myself out there as someone who's producing and managing and an authority figure,
Yes.
generate educational opportunities, spread the wealth a little bit in terms of knowledge. What I've really enjoyed about putting my words out there is I know all of this, so I've assumed for so many years that it's not that interesting to people. But it turns out I was just assuming that because I knew it, but they don't know it, so they are very interested in it. And I think that there can be a lot of doom and gloom in this industry because of the way things are changing or the way technology is taking apart the studios, the way streamers are changing the way that film production happens. And you could complain about it, or you could try to see if there's a way to leverage new media to work for you or your clients. And I'm much more interested in experimenting with the potential positives of what the internet has to offer than complaining about how it's ruining the studio model that has its own problems anyway.
Is this something that you share with your clients? Do you sort of impinge upon them the importance of having a positive mindset and not getting into the gloom and doom of the industry?
I don't spend a lot of time coaching my clients on how to think.
Right.
That might get into the realm of therapy. I do feel like I offer a lot of emotional support and a little bit of therapy, but I don't want to tell them how to think directly. But what I do is come into those conversations with that positive mindset. I want to be offering my clients actionable plans and solutions and recommendations. Here's what you can do for your career, and here's what I can do for your career. And I want that positivity to shine through my willingness to act and the energy that I bring to that conversation. If they are being negative, I can empathize with it because it's a feeling we all have. I think there's also, I don't want to get into the realm of toxic positivity where I'm ignoring all of the problems and pain in this industry. So I totally feel my clients' pain. I'm experiencing a lot of that uncertainty too, because my income is directly tied to theirs. So I don't ignore it. We can laugh about it. But then at the end of the day, there is always that consistent undercurrent of hope for me. Because if I didn't actually hope we could make it, then what would I be doing here?
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. Audrey, I'm always curious with guests. Do you feel like you, Audrey Knox, were put on this planet at this particular time in history for a specific reason, or do you feel like your being here is just random?
Yes, I think it's both. The universe is randomness and it has emerged as meaning. I'm a little bit on a spiritual journey, so I don't know how to talk about how I feel about some of these things yet, as I'm still exploring them for myself. I don't think our lives are predetermined. There is a specific thing that I'm here to do, but I think there is significance in the fact that we're here because it's so improbable. If you calculate the statistics of the atoms adding up to you as a human being,
Right?
so many things had to happen. It's actually impossible.
Great answer. Great answer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to acknowledge you for being such a light and such a breath of fresh air. I have met so many different people, as I'm sure you have in the industry, and you are very honest, which is so necessary, but you have such a way about you that is hopeful and just so beautiful. So thank you so much for that, for being such a beneficial presence in this industry. So important.
Of course, I'm trying my best. I have experienced all of the ups and downs and obstacles that I think a lot of writers have. I came up through the assistant side of things, which is not easy. It requires a ton of resilience. I survived a brief stint in reality TV, so you have to have a sense of humor and that thick skin coming out on the other side of it. But again, if I couldn't be positive, then what am I doing here? It's time to leave.
Thank you so much for hanging out. This has been awesome. And thank you in the Artist Tribe. Until next time. Bye.